Thank you very much. Welcome to our panel about cannabis extraction. My name is Michael Knot. I'm a freelance journalist, author of the so far only book in German language about cannabis extraction, which is this one. And so I felt competent to moderate this panel and have a lot of four very competent guests from the cannabis industry. And I want to start, I have to look at my notes, I'm sorry. I want to start with the president of the Decimal Engineered Systems, which is an Oregon-based market leader in commercial extraction system for cannabis and hemp. Jonah Baba, welcome. And Jonah, could you tell us about the background of your company? What are you doing? What's your everyday business?
Yeah, so we actually started back in 2012 from an analytical cannabis testing standpoint. We helped set the standards for testing hemp and cannabis in the US. And then we actually started making CO2 equipment based off of test results just to have more consistency and repeatability, implementing automation. And then we've continued to evolve with ethanol, hydrocarbon, distillation, isolation with a focus on automation for more repeatability, less manpower, and then now a focus, of course, on compliancy of EU GMP.
Thank you very much. Next to Jonah, we have Nick.
Hello?
Nick Brusianos. Did I pronounce that the right way? Thank you very much. You founded Cannabis in 2019, which is for a medical distributor for a leading manufacturer and services for specializing on the medical cannabis sector. So what's your daily business when it comes to extraction, or how are you connected with the extraction business?
We represent a very reputable manufacturer for extraction, for CO2 extraction from Europe. And we like to propose this as the main proposal from our company, combined with a closed system for winterization and dewaxing. Other than that, of course, we can offer other extraction methods like ethanol, like water extraction, or even vapor static, which is a new thing for us. But our main proposal is the CO2 extraction with a closed system for winterization and dewaxing coming after that.
And your company, Cannabis, is based in Greece as well?
Yeah, it's based in Athens, Greece. As you know, we have a local medical cannabis framework and some investments happening. And in Greece, you need to do everything from cultivation, processing, packaging, and you need to have a facility that does everything. So that was one of the motivations for us to offer all the solutions for the cultivation, to extraction, to packaging, in order to help our local projects. And this, of course, allowed us to enter other markets like Israel, like North Macedonia, that were more mature markets than the Greek market. And of course, afterwards, we expanded to Malta, Switzerland, and hopefully we're going to get towards the West a bit more.
So the Macedonian market is already a player in the game?
Yes, of course. The company that we represent has already 5 or 6 CO2 extraction systems working and installed. And it's an active market, and it's been growing up. Of course, you know, there are some facilities that are more successful than others, but it's considered a mature market for us, and it's close to our neighborhood. We can drive there, and it's a big market, actually.
Thank you, Nick. Come back to that later. Next to Nick, we have Dr. George Stanchev. Did I pronounce that the right way?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. You are an entrepreneur and CEO of a very innovative cannabis extraction company. Tell me more about the background of your company, please.
So we're a European company out of Bulgaria, 25 years experience in botanical extraction. We got into the cannabis industry by accident literally 10 years ago, and we have a US office of extraction and sales. We're most famous as Pure 5 extraction, purity in 5 senses. We're known for building system based on a 134A aerosol, which is extremely selective solvent and extracts high terpene profile with full cannabinoid profile, about 85% potency, no need for winterization, no need for any post-processing. So that's literally our biggest advantage in the industry. Being there, we've seen a lot into the cannabis market. even we make some other systems like ethanol, hexane. We're really focused on what gives the best value to the market.
And your company is based in?
The US company is based in Arizona.
Thank you.
We have offices in Colorado, Pennsylvania, Oregon, and California, where we extract also cannabis and hemp. The factory is still in Bulgaria, so we built everything in the European Union.
Interesting. And to my left, we have Dr. Joe Thompson, who already put up a lot of, or enabled a lot of companies to be a part of the extraction branch in the USA. Please tell me more about your company in the background.
Yeah, so we spent, basically we got started in 2014. We have 132 installations total. Not specifically only extraction, but we do extraction, distillation. We have a lot of chromatography, preparative chromatography. We're a materials company, so we do selective materials. Our primary focus these days is just servicing clinical trials. We're doing phase 1, phase 2 clinical trial support, CMO type work, and that's been really a good direction, I think, for the industry in general. We know that extraction systems alone are really not adequate for for the market. You need to be able to refine those. You need to be able to purify them, and full contained systems, fully automated systems. So our whole entire approach is a holistic approach that it really is fully contained systems, basically from extraction all the way through to isolate, from extraction all the way through to chromatography, 100% contained. Nobody touches it, and it goes right through. Fully CIP system enabled so that you can clean it out with just the push of the button. So those are what we're really working on, and we've been making those for pharmaceutical companies primarily. So we haven't serviced the recreational market in several years.
Yes, thank you very much. When it comes to Germany, I maybe have to explain that we are not on the level like in the US or in Canada when it comes to extraction, because our medical law does not allow the same extractions or the same extraction product for patient as the US or the Canadian law allows. So our extractions here in Germany so far are limited to 25% in the pharmacy. This is why German companies are not so experienced in that, and we choose a lot of experts from overseas. And please let me ask Jonah, there are a lot of different ways to extract cannabis. Which is the most popular way to extract cannabis for a company in Oregon or in the US?
So when it comes to extraction, there's no one perfect extraction method. And I think that's important to understand. Anyone that's just trying to sell you a specific piece of equipment without understanding, what your specific needs and goals are, is not going to be set up for success. And so I think the way we approach it, we actually engage with the customer and essentially reverse engineer what their goals are. So we talk to them about what kind of products do you want to make, what's kind of your throughput you're looking for, what's your budget, what kind of accreditations do you need, and then we actually reverse engineer the whole thing, essentially turnkey, even if you need like C1, D1 rooms and all the equipment, all the way from the beginning extraction, all the way to, again, distillation or isolation. I'd say right now, in Oregon, probably the most popular is BHO. Now, initially it was CO2 because CO2 was generally recognized as probably the most safest extraction. Jurisdictional and municipalities also felt most comfortable with that. And also from a customer base, just people thinking it was, the solvent was CO2 just made them feel more comfortable. Now that the market's been more educated and understand that, hydrocarbon really isn't dangerous if done properly, that's become more popular just because of the versatility as far as being able to do, you can do dry, fresh, frozen. You can make dabs. Now you can also make shatters, and also vape pens, and also distillate. So it really covers a lot of the basis, even from a cost standpoint as well, too. But then if customers are then we have hemp customers, though, that would like to make, do 10,000 pounds a day and want to make all distillate and isolate. And for something like that, then we're going to go like a large ethanol system. So it's really just project specific is how we look at it. And we really try to partner with our customers to understand their needs and tailor something specifically for them.
Thanks, Jonah. Nick, as a European extractor, would you agree? What do you think? Why do you think we do in Europe? We mostly do CO2 extraction. Sometimes we do ethanol.
Yeah.
But BHO or even PHO is not attractive here. Why is that so?
From what we've seen so far, most of the requests and most of the investments happening at this moment are with the CO2 extraction method. Of course, we get requests, and there are investments with the ethanol as a method. It's well established as well, but at the smaller number. And now we start to see some requests for water extraction, which I think is also interesting. And a little bit of vapor static, but mainly the request we receive is for CO2 extraction, much less ethanol, and let's say water extraction is start to picking up and be part of the discussion, which is quite an established method for the recreational market in the US and Canada, and we understand the reasons why they want to approach it. And it could be a cheap solution, not an investment, a high investment, and it's quick and it uses water, so.
May that be maybe because the terps in the German or in the European medical market, the terpenes, do not play a major role.
No.
George, would you agree if I say that may be a case because if terpenes do not play a major role, the method of extraction is not so important? How's the experience in the US states you are working at?
Yeah, one of the things that is important, obviously, is the stability of the extract, especially in a GMP setting. And when you have terpenes in the GMP extract, that is not a stable extract. And so from the standpoint of GMP, it's really not allowed. In fact, we know from the FDA trials with Sativex, for example, which failed primarily because of those terpenes that were in there and the background and the unknowns that were being generated. So when you think about a clinical, like a pharma type of clinical mindset, you're typically looking to get an extract that's as clean as possible, that's as stable as possible, that's shelf stable, and that's why it's important to have multiple different means to purify your extracts. Not only to the extracts, we can all talk about different ways to extract, but ultimately it has to be purified, it has to be formulated. Like you said, 25% only is allowed. That's a formulated extract, right?
If we look to Colorado, George, for example, is that which role do terpenes play? Do they play a major role, or do cannabinoids play the major role when it comes to extraction?
Entourage effect is very important. Usually terpenes are a multiplier. With right terpenes in there, you really can turn them out like 1 + 1 makes 4, because they really make that extract more bioavailable. And the terpenes, they manipulate the cannabinoids into the proper way. I've been talking to a lot of patients from Oregon and Colorado when the first states, when they came legal, and they recognized that this strain can help him for this strain can help him for that. And the difference in between strains is really the terpene profile. There are about 30,000 terps in nature, and there are about 300 terps known in cannabis. And combination between them, they amplify the effect a lot. So terps, they play a major role, and there's a lot to talk about it. Like looking at US market, we've learned a lot. So how that market evolved, starting from a crude, from like Rick Simpson, going through distillates, going through enhanced botanical extraction, like botanical terpenes. That's all about experience and adding the right terps, mostly for experience, not so much for medical. And but there are new regulations in California. We're going to talk about that too. That regulates the terpene now. But yes, terps to me they play a big role into the cannabis experience, and they enhance the medical effects, big time.
Thanks. So we come to the next question, which goes out to all panelists in that case. Is that a conflict between the patient's demand and the regulatory when it comes to FDA or the German Cannabis Agency when it comes to clinical studies on the long term? The one side says we don't need to, we cannot have the terpenes, or we don't want them because they don't stabilize the product, then we have an unstable product. But on the other side, we have the patient's demand for terps. How can we solve that on the long range, Jonah?
You know, I think it's important to consider the difference, of course, between recreational and medical. And when it's medical, like here in Germany, typically what we're going to see is the government's going to be overly cautious when they're first introducing a new product or a new market, and they want to be able to have predictive results. And so that's even when it comes to like diluting and things like that. That way they can identify, a repeatable experience with the patient from that side. And so I think the only way to be able to handle that would be, again, where you can kind of fractionize, you can either fractionize different cannabinoids, get exact percentages, and then even with terpenes now, you can do that. And so I think it would have to be, again, a very repeatable, controlled process for it to actually, be acceptable here, medically from that side.
Joe, please.
Well, one of the key issues here is, the FDAs and not only the regulatory bodies, they want to be able to show that the placebo effect is real versus a placebo, which is nearly impossible to do because you're talking about multiple hundreds of different compounds within the formulation. So from a clinical perspective or medical perspective, pharmaceutical perspective, those types of things have a real big of a problem. And if I'm going to spend $50 million to get a drug through, I'm not going to start with a product that has, something in it that's going to degrade because it's too costly when the FDA says at the end of it that it's no good because it's degrading. So, and then also the claims themselves, what would be the endpoint would be the key question in a clinical study. And that would be like, okay, so this particular terpene has a 10x effect with a ratio of, say, THC or CBD. Okay, well, then you have to prove that and versus placebo. So that from a medical and pharmaceutical perspective, that's really the key barrier because even the real world data is very convoluted. It's not very easy to come up with a real world data that says, hey, this is actually working. So one of the great things about the recreational market is that you can get clinical real world data from that as for efficacy. If those companies actually design their studies to get that data, they could really do a lot better with their clinical studies.
Thank you. Nick, let me ask a little bit provocative, to provoke you a little.
Okay.
Would you think it would be better to have two kinds of extracts? One without anything, pure cannabinoids, just for the medical side, and another one for the recreational side, containing all the terpenes and other ingredients which are not in the medical?
What do you mean exactly? Like to have two different products, one for
two different to have the medical product terpene-free, so it's a stable product, and to have the recreational product like full of terpenes, like full spectrum, but to leave leave it out of the medical product, not to have conflicts, so to speak, with the regulatory side.
Yeah, we can discuss about this. It's a matter of regulation, as we all discussed before. So if they allow this to happen, and we can have these products in the recreational or adult market within Europe, it will be a good scenario for the market and for the patients or users of these products. When we're talking about medical products, as we all discussed, you need to be very specific and to have specific formulation, repeatable and tested and proven, and to have the reasons of why this formulation is there and for what application. So, yes, of course, I would like to see these products to be available in the European market in any way possible.
Would that be a solution for the US market, terp-free extracts for patients? George?
Well, everybody knows what indica is, sativa is, and hybrid is. It's all these terps. The terps make a cannabis oil indica, sativa, or hybrid. We know that in marijuana, usually 95% is the THC. There are other minor cannabinoids, but they're less than 10, less than 5%. So everything else that defines the medicinal values of the extract or how it works to the human being is based on the terpene profile. I would say maybe for certain patients that they have a cancer conditions, use the distillate or something combined with direct cannabinoids in a certain recipe. Literally a recipe like CBD to THC 1-in-1 with 5% CBG is a proven recipe for cancer from some medical institutions, and the reports based on that. But for the general consumer, they're going to be looking for the properties under the original strains.
Sure.
One of the issues there is just simply once it becomes a drug, like CBD became a drug in the United States, all of the formulations essentially by the regulatory agencies became adulterated products. And that's why they've been, even though they've been on the market, they're basically not allowed to advertise, they're not allowed to have banking, they're not allowed to have all these things that a normal company would have. The same thing is going to happen with THC in the United States. And I think that will have a global impact also. So it would be really great if there was such a thing as like a recreational, tasty version, which there has to be. There's going to be, no matter what we do from the clinical standpoint. But I think that the FDA is going to try to, squash, at least in the U.S., the competition. Yeah.
What's the role of the FDA in general? I have to ask Jonah, what's the role of the FDA in general? Because as a German, I think it's federally illegal, so the FDA doesn't have to do anything with it. But it's not like this, is it?
Yeah, I mean, essentially the role of the FDA is to ensure safety, for consumers in the U.S. But where it can be frustrating, of course, is, they've been talking about having CBD be essentially approved by the FDA people thought it'd be 3, 4, 5 years ago, and it still hasn't happened. I'm sorry. Oh, yes, from a pharmaceutical side, you're correct. But from what people were talking about as far as being able to put it in food products and beverages and things like that, I think a lot of people in the U.S. expected it to have happened by now, and it hasn't, which, caused a lot of companies to then, go out of business from that side because they're expecting for that to have happened by now. And so, but, so until the government's actually put the right budget behind things to do the studies that they say they're going to do, things are just going to continue in limbo, from that side.
Yeah, because it's a drug. Because it's a drug, they're not allowed to do that without it being adulterated. So the fact that Epidiolex is there basically makes all that development impossible without going through the FDA process.
Compared to overseas, in Germany, we have very little users of extract. My guess is, I don't have the numbers here, but my guess is we have less than 5% of medical users or even recreational users using extracts. What are the numbers in the US? George, about you. You work in a lot of states. How compared to buds? What's the percent? How many people consume liquids or consume extracts?
So in the United States, most of the users were medical a few years ago. Now most of the users are recreational. So with that change, we're looking at that industry growing as a gourmet industry. We're really literally cooking for our customers. We're preparing the best experience for them. And with that said, I see in the last years, vaping is going crazy. Vaping and eatables versus the flower.
Would you agree that's the fastest growing sector within the cannabis industry, Jonah?
Yeah, no, 100%. And we saw that a lot in Oregon, to where initially, like early on, it was like 15, 16, I think it was probably about 70, 80% flower sales. But now it's, I think, by 60, 70% more oil is what you'll see, because the oil is the catalyst for all the other products. It's not just the vape pens, it's the edibles, it's the tinctures, it's the creams, the lotions, topicals. And so, yeah, it significantly surpassed flower, and we start to see that in all the new states that come online as well, too. It's pretty predictable.
Nick, what do you think is the future of extraction in Europe? Do you think we will reach the US level soon, or how do you see the future of extractions in Europe?
Yeah, hopefully it will get bigger. It has to get bigger. I think extracts are more suited for the pharmacies in the way they're working on their applications, the final products that will be available. I think they're going to see more delivery methods targeting specific treatments, like different, like maybe inhalers, soft mist inhalers, nasal sprays, this type of final products. And yeah, hopefully we're going to see more of that.
George, you work in several US states. Is the regulation all the same there, or do you have to like, okay, this counts for Colorado, this counts for California, or is that a big gap? Or
Well, regulations, of course, they're different, but they're different in a way of taxation and on the way of licensing. Everything else seems to be like the branding is allowed, like if you have a brand in one state, that can propagate through all the states that are legal, which pretty much provides same quality of extract everywhere. But again, every state has a different policy on taxation and licensing, which is the biggest difference.
You know, in the United States, certainly, basically the FDA has just issued 8 DEA licenses. That's the first federally allowed licenses for the production of, for the production basically of drugs. And I think that is going to eclipse the multi-state operator model within 5 years. Simply because once those drugs get through the FDA, then the FDA will have action against the states, and we'll kind of see them flex their muscles on that. I think that's what's coming. So again, the federal illegal stuff that's happening in the states is probably on its last legs. I think in the next 5 years, I think definitely we're going to have the FDA running the show. And that's the way it's been in the United States, and I think it's going to continue to be that way with these drugs.
which makes me come to my final question. I think this step is the most important, or will give the cannabis industry a very, very big push when it's medical, legal, federal in the US. Do you think this will still happen under Biden?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be rescheduled sometime in September or November or September.
Really?
Based on, we work with 5 of the 8 licensees right now, and we've worked with the DEA, which is the Drug Enforcement Administration, directly. So yeah, that's going to happen, and that will have a ripple effect around the world for sure.
Would you agree it's a game changer, George, if it's federally legal as a medicine?
I wish. I don't know. That process never really happened. We've been talking about in the last 2 years. But I see that really the biggest problem is, yes, FDA is going to need to take a call on the doses, because they need to issue proper doses for everything, for different ages, I guess. There are different kickbacks in every state. How do we market? How do we license? How do we do all those details? Now, California, like 2 weeks ago, they issued another limitation. You cannot market strains and products with kids' attractive names like candies, like all these things. There are going to be a lot of when that gets federally legal. There are going to be a lot of limitations. I don't know if they're ready to do that this fall. If they're ready, they're probably going to do it.
Thank you very much. My last question goes to Nick. Nick, we don't hear so much from Greece. We hear a lot about Europe, but from Greece on federal level, do you think they will ease up cannabis laws also for medical cannabis in Greece soon?
We already have a framework that has been around for 5 years.
But you don't have so many patients, do you?
We have 0 patients.
I know.
So yeah, we are preparing the framework. We are preparing the way these products are going to enter the Greek pharmacies. There's been some moves from some big players on how this will happen in combination with the, how it's called, the classic pharmaceutical companies that deliver these products. And of course, the main question is when and how many and how easy it will become to become a patient and to actually have access to this product, which I think this goes not only for Greece, but it goes for all Europe. And maybe the previous questions that you asked about FDA, hopefully what you say is going to happen in September. And I think this will allow Europe, will allow maybe Germany to move a bit faster and without being afraid of FDA. And then if Germany moves forward, then I think the rest of the Europe will follow that. So I see it a little bit like Europe is waiting for FDA, Germany is waiting for that, and the rest of Europe is waiting for Germany.
Thank you very much. And I also think the FDA move would be a game changer also for Germany because also money transactions will be legal on international level, and this will be a big game changer. Thank you very much to all panelists for the expertise. And, thank you very much.
Thank you again, Michael.